What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about some things that Destruction All-Stars needs to do in order to be successful, in order to stay around for a long time. I don't know when this video goes up in regards to my review, but I've been talking about this game for quite a long time, and I've always been pretty positive on it. Now the game is out. It's got some good things. It's got some bad things. I think one of the main weaknesses of this game is the lack of stuff, and maybe it could even be the hook with the game. Now, hopefully, that's not what the majority of people think, because if the hook of what the game is about, you know, jumping into cars, ramming into people, all that kind of stuff, if that gets old, if that gets too repetitive, the game really is done. That's just the case really with any multiplayer kind of game. But I want to go over a couple things, 3 things actually, in this video of maybe what they can add, what they can change to make this a better experience overall for people. Now, as always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. And my review of this game is actually going to go up on my second channel, so make sure you guys are subscribed there. Podcast Now Plus is its name. I'll leave a link for it in the description below. All right, number 1 is kind of a cop-out, and maybe people aren't going to like that I'm starting with this, but I do think this is important, and it's not even to do with the game itself, like playing the game. It's fix the servers. Now, I really didn't think we'd have this issue, and I don't know why. I was probably really naive. I didn't think we'd have this issue with a game like this. Going into Predator Hunting Grounds, I was, I think, the only one warning people of the dangers of what could be happening day 1 with Predator Hunting Grounds, and that is like the long loading times. Now, every game is going to have some struggles the multiplayer games. Every multiplayer game is going to have some struggles the first couple days. They're going to have more people than they, you know, the stress test can only do so much. It's going to be, problematic, okay? Friday the 13th was god-awful in terms of getting into a match, a full match, and playing. Predator Hunting Grounds was god-awful at getting into a match, whether, really either, because everybody wanted to play as the Predator, all that kind of stuff. And those are just some examples, and I've said before, like Rocket League, which I've jumped back into the last couple months. I think there's so many people playing Rocket League that makes it easy, and obviously you're jumping in to all do the same thing, so it's very easy to get people. But you jump in, you're in matches within like 5 to 10 seconds in Rocket League, so that's really good. Destruction All-Stars is borderline awful. Some modes have nobody playing it. Now, you can't do anything about that. If nobody's playing, say, Gridfall, nobody's playing Gridfall, and you can't, like, just create people to all of a sudden start playing it. You know what I mean? So, obviously, that's an issue, but that's not something really in their control. I think Carnado, I think we could probably all agree, is the most populated, and I would say it's my most fun. I obviously can't say that for all of you guys, but it's definitely the most populated mode in this game. But I will tell you this. Sometimes it'll take me, 15, 20 seconds. Sometimes it'll take 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then the network will crash, okay? There's really no in between, actually. It's either really short or you have to wait like an hour. And I know that sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I have had to wait before like 20, 25 minutes to get into matches. And sometimes I'll quit the game and just restart it, because sometimes I find that is actually more helpful to just in my circumstances. So that's one thing they need to fix. And then when you get into the matches, and maybe you guys feel the same way, or maybe you guys have experienced this, maybe not, let me know. I have countless times not been on even teams. I said this actually in my review. The amount of times I've been on an 8v8 is like 5-10% of my overall matches. Say like in Carnado, the amount of times I've been on 8v8 is like 10% of the overall times. Most times it's 5v4, 6v5, 8v2. I've been in matches multiple times where it's me and one other person, or me and 2 other people, and it's against 7 or 8 people. And again, that's not fun. People quit immediately. The match is basically pointless because you know which team is going to win and you know what's going to happen. So, like, all of that stuff, by the way, can be fixed. They need to work on that and make it so that you go into a match and you're always going into a match with an even amount of people, at least even amount of people, if not a full match. Okay, if you can't find 16 people playing at one time, number 1, that's a big issue. That's actually something that would be pretty worrisome. But number 2, you have to at least make it even. All right, so that's pretty fixable, and that's outside the base game. Second thing, maps. You got to add more maps. Now, there are quite a few maps in this game. The issue with them is they're not all that much different from each other, and I get that the mode is very it's very connected to what the map is. So like in Gridfall, obviously the map has more importance because the floor is literally falling on you, right? So you're paying attention to the map more. Now, maps aren't everything, but I would say, again, going back to a very popular game and a game that I've gone back to multiple times in its career of being alive, Rocket League. I remember when Rocket League first came out, and I don't know how many maps there were, but there were very, very few, and you would always play the same thing. Now, it doesn't make that big of a difference, especially for Rocket League, because you're just playing inside a soccer field, and the outside is purely visual when you're driving around. But you play it now, there are so many different... You could play for like 2 hours, or maybe, okay, again, exaggerating, but you could play for quite a long time in a row and not get the same map. For Destruction All-Stars, it's slightly different because, well, number one, there's not as many maps. There's like, what, 4 or 5 maps maybe? And also, again, but this time the maps do influence the game because you're driving around in the different maps. There's different barriers. There's different jumping platforms. There's all of this different stuff that really affect how the game goes. Again, yes, it does depend on the mode, okay? So like Carnado, obviously the map is going to act slightly different than it would in Gridfall and so on. But I think you have to change it up quite a bit so that you're always trying to give people a different experience in it. That kind of goes to like a Predator Hunting Grounds thing. I know I already mentioned that, but like that when it came out, didn't it have, I think it had 2 or 3 maps. That's pathetic. And you could feel it where it's like you're just experiencing the same thing over and over. Yeah, the basic elements of the game can change each time because, you know, the Predator is always going to be different. The fire team is always going to be different, but you're doing the exact same thing every time. It's the same map. It's the same layout. Kind of the same thing for Destruction All-Stars, where you know the cars are going to operate differently. You know the people are going to be different every time because they're always, you know, actual people. But you know, I think people may get a certain way in these maps where they like realize things, and it's okay. By the way, like you need to be able to read the maps, you need to be able to understand how they work to be able to hit people, right, and actually play the game. But to add more maps adds to that challenge, and I would say adds to the fun. And by the way, I know I should have probably said this earlier. I know they're going to be adding these things over they said they have a year's worth of content. I know they'll have more maps. I assume they'll have another mode, which by the way, I do want to throw modes into this one as well. Definitely more modes. Now, more modes isn't always better because, again, we have 4 modes, and I would say 2 of them nobody plays in the first place. So when you're adding modes, they need to be good modes. I'm not saying, by the way, they're bad. I actually like Gridfall. I can just never get a match in there because nobody's playing it, okay? So I think all the modes actually are pretty solid overall, but nobody plays half of them. And even Stockpile, I don't really see all that many people playing. So, and that could just be an opinion. Maybe that's not the actual case, but that's how I see it, at least, right? So I do expect more modes to be added, or I want more modes to be added, but they need to be good, because if you continue to spread out the fan base, that's not going to help it. You know what I mean? Like right now, well, you could say, like, ironically, like everybody is all into just Carnado right now, and you'd maybe want them to separate into the other ones, but we don't know how many people are playing. Like, we don't know how many people we're taking away from that base pool. And if you continue to add more modes, you are continuing to spread people out, and you may not find matches in ones that you used to. Like, maybe in 2 months from now, if they add a new mode, maybe Carnado now is unplayable because nobody's playing it, right? So those are things to keep in mind. And the last thing, technically there are 4 things, because of map, modes, you know, stuff like that. Characters. Again, all of these are pretty simplistic, but I think the explanations are obviously what makes it a little bit different. You need to add more characters. And now, well, here's the deal. I am actually quite impressed with the characters. I've said this before. I think I said this in my top 3, because I did a top 3, best characters in this game. While not all characters, I would say there's very clearly some weaker characters, and there's very clearly some characters that are good. What I will say is I do think, much like any game, much like fighting games, much like really anything, if you really dedicate yourself to understanding a character and you play them in the right circumstances and all that stuff, I think, any character can be very effective. I would like to think, even from a development standpoint, you do not make a character that just is flat out awful, right? You don't go into it thinking that. You're thinking, okay, this character may be weaker in this aspect, but if you use them in this way, they're actually really good, right? And you gotta think like that for all 16 characters, okay? So I would say it's not like I'm kind of giving it praise while also saying what they need to improve upon. I am happy with the 16 characters. I do think there are definitely like tiers. Like there's like a top 5 or 6 that I think are pretty clear to people. There's probably like a bottom 6, and then there's like a middle-ish area, right? I think that's obviously that's 18 characters if you do that, but that's around roughly where it is. Again, adding new characters. Now you have to be careful, especially again for a game like this, because when you add a new character, that means you're adding a new ability with that character, and you're adding a new car with an ability with that character. And what you don't want to do is make a character, again, that is just so overly powerful that it's like, okay, they are, everybody's going to go towards them. Honestly, I would look to a game for like Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, as a good example of how to do this. Now, when Anakin came out, when Count Dooku, when Grievous, oh my dear God, you couldn't play as them. There was 0% chance of you playing as General Grievous in a heroes versus villains match when that game first came out, okay? You got lucky if you did it once in like a 3-hour play session, all right? But General Grievous, now actually, ironically, General Grievous was my favorite character. He was my best character to play as. Like, I was just God tier as him in Battlefront. But could he be defeated by everybody else? Absolutely. Many of the original characters that came in that game were definitely good enough. And by the way, they can have buffs and you can move things up and down, which I do expect Destruction All-Stars to do as well. But they were also just fundamentally solid enough where they were still good, even as you were adding new characters. So again, that's kind of, this isn't talking to you guys. We aren't making the characters, right? But just something to be aware of is we can want new characters. I would say you got to be careful of how many you're giving us at once, and you got to be careful of how they play, because if they play way too powerful, and that can happen. I mean, they could definitely do a character and it's like, oh my God, they are just flat out better than everybody else, and that's an issue that breaks the game. And how does it break the game? Well, they're going to be more powerful in the game, so that's an issue. And then also, everybody's going to want to play as them, and everybody can't play as them in any given mode, right? So you have to be really fast to click on them, or you just have to wait for their popularity to die down. So there are pros and cons kind of to all of these things, but those are the things I think Destruction All-Stars need. So let me know, guys, in the comments below. What do you think? What are some things you want added to this game? Do you agree with my stuff? Let me know. As always, again, make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. If you guys want to watch my review or just check out my second channel in general, Podcast Now Plus is its name. I'll leave a link for it in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope to see you all on the next video.